One of the most common questions that I get here on the channel is, where do I find a prepper group? How do I find like-minded people who are willing to organize and motivated enough to plan for disaster scenarios? So I figured I'd give you the top 5 places where you can find prepper groups and hopefully help expand your network. So in a recent video, I had a discussion with my local prepper group, and we talked about logistics and just organization in general. And a lot of people asked me, how did you meet these guys and where did you find a group of like-minded people like this? Well, I will tell you, the first place on this list to find prepper groups is going to be firearms training, your local shooting range, your local gun store, and meeting people that are like-minded in the sense of taking self-defense and the reasonings behind self-defense to that next level, that willingness to actually train, that willingness to actually get out and try to improve on their skills. And you will find people within that crowd that also have a willingness to prepare as well. Now, my suggestion when it comes to inserting yourself into that community is to become a regular. You can't just show up day one and demand to be part of some type of group. People are going to think you're crazy, right? So you want to become a regular, you want to meet people on a regular basis, remember names, remember faces, become a familiar face yourself, and then show that you have something to offer. And then those conversations should develop naturally and organically to the point where you start discussing expanded preparedness outside of the realm of just firearms or firearms training. So that's the first place I would suggest you to find a prepper group. So let's talk about the next one. All right, the number 2 best place to find a prepper group is going to be a place of worship. Honestly, if you go to church or temple or whatever you do, that's actually a great place to find these like-minded people. You guys have the same belief system already, so there's a set of moral values that already exist within the community. And then places of worship and religions and everything else related to that in general tend to have a strong sense of community as well as charity. And that sense of community and charity goes very far in the sense of helping each other during an emergency. So understand that there will be people likely within your congregation or within your religious affiliation that prepare and are ready for things to get worse. And if you want a great example of that, you can look at the Church of Latter-day Saints, right? They're out there doing tons of pressure canning and prepping away, and it's like part of their commitment to their religion. So look, not everybody's religious. That's understandable. Not everybody has to be, right? It's not a requirement, but I'm letting you know that if you're looking for these groups, places of worship tend to be a good place to find them. So let's move on to the best place, number 3. So the third best place to find a prepper group is going to be through some sort of medical training. Understand that the people there are going above and beyond to get advanced levels of preparation when it comes to first aid and self-reliance. And that's a great place to find people who are concerned about the same things that you and I both are. Now understand there's Stop the Bleed classes all over the country. Some of them are free. You can also take classes from companies like Refuge Medical, which I actually took. Very informative, very well done, and I learned quite a bit. But you can also find Red Cross classes that offer CPR or first aid, and a lot of those are free as well. And you can find these in your area, which means the people who are local to you that are taking these classes might be a good asset. Even if they're not necessarily a prepper, they might be at least keen to the idea of preparation because here they are trying to learn how to save lives, right? So medical training is a great place to find other preparedness-minded individuals. So what's next? Now, number 4 on this list of the best places to find prepper groups is going to be a lot more obvious, yet I don't think people utilize it as much to its potential as they could possibly be doing. That's going to be online networking. Look, here we are on YouTube, part of this big preparedness community, and the comment section below has tons of people involved in preparedness. Why not post that you're looking for people in your area? And I've seen that happen quite a bit, and people tend to respond. So use the utilities that we have access to now in order to expand your network. We also have things like Discord servers, and I have one that I'll link down below in the description as well as in the pinned comment, where we have channels for every state, we have channels for multiple countries, and people do network there and try to build a local community where they can rely on these folks to help them out in an emergency. So these are things we should be using to our advantage now while we still can. And even though social media has a lot of downfalls, it does provide the opportunity to network with people you would otherwise not be able to. And especially when we talk about things like particular Discord servers or like members only platforms or things like that, you have people that are willing to take that extra step and that want to be involved with the preparedness community, which means that these are the types of people you generally probably want to associate with. So let's move on to the last place on this list where you can find good prepper groups. So the fifth best place to find prepper groups is going to be through CERT, which is Community Emergency Response Team, which is an organization that's funded by taxpayer money in every state in the United States, and where the local community comes together to develop a team that will respond during a crisis scenario. They offer 20-hour local courses, and the training includes things like disaster psychology, basic fire suppression, elementary disaster medical operations, and light search and rescue, which means everybody who's there is going to be more valuable after this training. They're going to become an asset when it comes to a disaster scenario, and a lot of the instructors and the people involved have backgrounds in being a first responder. So this is a great place to find people who are taking that extra step to not only learn more about preparedness, they actually learn about disaster response, and they're willing to help their community during an emergency situation, which I think is a big deal. So understand that these are my top 5 places where you can find like-minded people and hopefully establish some type of prepper group. Now, you also need to keep in mind that you shouldn't just walk in the door of the first group you find and just get settled in, right? Do proper vetting. Make sure that everybody lines up with what you assume you'd want to associate with, because there are groups out there that may or may not be, let's just say, a little bit on the negative side of things when it comes to their thought process and ideology, right? And we also know that you have to take your time inserting yourself as well. Don't expect to be welcomed into a well-organized group day one just because you showed up and said, hey, I watch prepper channels and I know what I'm talking about, right? That's just not how it's going to work either. So be patient, take your time, but if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to find prepper groups. So that's the first step. And these are lower risk investments because the things that I'm explaining here in the sense of all these different places that you can find these people are going to put you around people who are like-minded versus just shooting darts off into the internet and to the proverbial dartboard that doesn't exist and saying, hopefully I land somewhere that makes sense for me, right? So if you have any questions or comments or suggestions about how you found your prepper group, leave it in the comments below. It can definitely help people out. And if you have any need or desire to find groups, you can also comment that below too, because it won't hurt anything. You can establish communications right here on YouTube and then move it somewhere else if need be. But these are things we should be doing and steps we should be taking because we're going to need each other if things get really bad. And there's a lot of indicators to show that things might get really bad at some point soon here. So without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.